Not far away, the Yin patriarch and his companions looked at the newly appeared Xiao Yan with a hint of astonishment. They hadn't expected the one who dared offend Xuanling Hall to be such a young-looking man. However, they didn't underestimate him, as the earlier clash had proven his strength to be on par with Jiku. Interesting. Xuanling Hall forced him out, only to lose the upper hand in the first exchange. In the distant sky, a white-robed youth and a brown-robed elder hovered mid-air, two powerful figures from Spirit King Manor. Great Elder, since this boy has shown himself, as per the Hall Master's instructions, the white-robed youth said, glancing at the elder. Naturally. The brown-robed elder, addressed as Great Elder, responded with a faint smile. With a swift movement, he crossed the sky, appearing before the Yin Patriarch and his group within moments. What brings Elder Ling Yi here, after merely spectating earlier? The Heavenly Fire Supreme and others narrowed their eyes at the approaching elder. They knew this man, Great Elder Ling Yi of Spirit King Manor, was rumored to be at the peak of the 8th grade Supreme level. His inaction during Xuanling Hall's earlier aggression had been noticed by all. No need to speculate. I act on the Hall Master's orders, adapting to the situation as it unfolds, Ling Yi replied bluntly, surprising the Yin Patriarch and his group with his candor. Well, at least you're honest, the Yin Patriarch retorted, glancing at Ling Yi and the youth following him. His gaze then shifted toward another part of the sky, where two figures approached. Everyone seems to have their own schemes. The newcomers were Wu Xian and Lian Yun of Lotus King Manor. Initially, they had planned to confront Xuanling Hall only after more allies joined forces. After all, Jiku and the Heavenly King Hall Master were formidable mid-stage Earth Supreme powerhouses. Facing them required at least 6 allied kings. However, Xiao Yan's timely arrival altered the situation. If Xiao Yan could hold off Jiku, then 4 kings would suffice to resist the Heavenly King Hall Master. Thus, even if Spirit King Manor abstained, Lotus King Manor was determined to join the fray. As the involvement of Spirit King Manor and Lotus King Manor amazed many, countless eyes turned to the center of the mountain range. Atop a shattered peak, a massive spatial prison hovered in mid-air. Thousands of figures were imprisoned within, though they could not perceive the outside world, as the prison, created by an Earth Supreme, severed all external energy fluctuations. Nevertheless, the terrifying power from Xiao Yan and Jiku's earlier clash caused a tremor that shook the spatial prison, alarming its captives. Among them, a few displayed joy rather than fear. 3 young men and Yi Tianlian, whom Xiao Yan had previously rescued, along with Yirong, still learning to speak. It's Xiao Yan. He's here. Yi Tianlian's despair turned to elation, echoed by the joyful reactions of the youths. Xiao Yan. Brother Xiao. Flame brother. Yirong, still adapting to speech after her seals were removed by Xiao Yan, recognized her savior. Clearly, in the earlier exchange, Jiku, an Earth Supreme, had fallen into a disadvantage. Xiao Yan, is he the lower dimension powerhouse who saved you? Asked the Yuanda sect master weakly, cradling Yirong despite his severe injuries. While the captives marveled at the tremor, the scene outside the spatial prison was vastly different. In the sky above, 3 elders from Xuanling Hall stood in disbelief, their gaze fixed on a figure not far away. None other than their hall master, Jiku. Like them, Jiku was shocked. Although aware that Xiao Yan was also an Earth Supreme, he hadn't expected this youthful-looking man to repel him head-on. Impossible. Jiku muttered in disbelief. But as his shock lingered, Xiao Yan's voice, filled with anger, echoed through the heavens. Xiao Yan's voice spread slowly, followed by a second and a third, sending a wave of shock through everyone present. It became evident that Xiao Yan's demand for Xuanling Hall to release their captives within 10 breaths was no idle threat. 8. 7. Each of Xiao Yan's words, though spaced by a few breaths, carried an overwhelming might that reverberated throughout the mountain range. It left many uneasy, silently sympathizing with Xuanling Hall. They had clearly provoked a force they couldn't handle this time. 3. Xiao Yan's voice echoed once again, shaking heaven and earth and causing hearts to tremble. At this moment, Zhigu and his companions remained calm, continuing their silent standoff with Xiao Yan. 2. 1. A cold and indifferent gaze emanated from Xiao Yan's eyes, and an intense heat, so overwhelming it seemed to melt the very space around him, began to spread from his body. Across from him, Zhigu stood with his hands behind his back, hovering in midair, watching Xiao Yan's countdown with amusement, as if curious to see what Xiao Yan would do next. Then, Xiao Yan's final word resounded across the heavens and earth, his tone calm and unremarkable. 0. As the word fell, a profound silence descended. Xiao Yan's figure had inexplicably vanished, leaving no trace. No one knew when or how he disappeared, but they all understood that his disappearance coincided precisely with the end of his countdown. Even Zhigu narrowed his eyes slightly, but before he could react, a scalding hand was already pressed against the crown of his head. In his pupils, the ghostly figure of Xiao Yan loomed larger and larger. At the same time, Xiao Yan's cold, murderous voice rang in Zhigu's ears. Xun'ling Hall will be annihilated. Boom. Xiao Yan's figure appeared above Zhigu, unleashing a terrifying wave of spiritual energy imbued with fiery fluctuations. In an instant, the area within 1,000 kilometers was engulfed in a sea of flames. The firestorm contracted swiftly, condensing into a minuscule light point before Zhigu, radiating an aura of overwhelming destruction. Even an early-stage Earth Supreme would struggle to survive contact with this tiny light. Ding! The light flared brilliantly in front of Zhigu's face, unleashing a devastating ripple that made the entire mountain range, and even the surrounding space, quake violently. Buzz! At the moment the light burst forth, space behind Xiao Yan suddenly distorted. An aged arm extended toward the crown of his head. Sensing the disturbance, Xiao Yan's expression darkened. Show yourself! With a sharp cry, Xiao Yan waved his sleeve, redirecting the radiant light from Zhigu toward the distorted space behind him. Zhigu, seizing the moment, retreated thousands of meters in a flash. As he pulled back, the arm reaching out from the void disappeared just as quickly. The dazzling light finally exploded, releasing an inferno so immense it seemed to collapse the heavens. At its center was an enormous, multicolored fireball stretching thousands of meters across, melting everything within its reach. From the countdown to the attack on Zhigu, to the emergence of this apocalyptic fireball, all of it transpired in an instant. When the spectators regained their senses, all they could see was the gigantic fireball dominating the sky. What happened? That fiery power is terrifying. Where are the lower dimension powerhouse and the captives? The crowd erupted into chaos as they tried to make sense of what had just occurred. Even some high-ranked Supreme experts struggled to catch all the details of the event. There! A startled voice suddenly rang out, directing everyone's attention to the sky thousands of meters away from the fireball. There, Xiao Yan stood in midair, and behind him floated a massive prison of spatial energy containing thousands of figures. In the instant the heavenly spotted explosion detonated, Xiao Yan had left the blast zone, taking with him the spatial prison that held the members of the Yuanda sect. If he had left it behind, it would have been vaporized along with everything else by the fireball. After all, the heavenly pattern was one of Xiao Yan's trump cards. In the distant sky, the Yin-Yang Patriarch and others gazed at Xiao Yan in shock. "Where is Zhigu?" the heavenly fire supreme asked, his gaze sweeping across the heavens and earth in search of Zhigu's figure. However, no matter how hard he looked, Zhigu remained unseen. Boom! Above the horizon, the massive fireball began to contract. The space it revealed was burned into a void of tens of thousands of feet in diameter. However, Xiao Yan's gaze did not linger on the melted void. Instead, it locked onto another space tens of thousands of feet away. That area was slowly distorting, and 4 figures emerged from within. These were none other than Zhigu and the 3 elders of Xun'ling Hall, whom Zhigu had pulled out of the fireball's range at the last moment. Countless eyes in heaven and earth turned toward the 4 who had appeared. Even the Yin-Yang Patriarch and others focused on Zhigu, their expressions sharpening. None of them had anticipated that Zhigu could escape such a terrifying explosion, let alone bring 3 elders out with him. Yet as Jiku revealed himself, the space behind him rippled once more. An aged hand stretched out, followed by a black-robed figure stepping forth. The newcomer was an elderly man with long, fiery red hair that seemed like blazing flames. A mere glance was enough to feel the burning fire energy emanating from it. His crimson eyes glimmered with 4 faintly discernible flames, each resembling one of the 4 divine beasts: azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. What truly shocked all the powerful individuals present was the aura radiating from the black-robed elder. It was far more terrifying than Jiku's. To the Yin-Yang Patriarch and others, who were half a step into the Earth Supreme stage, the elder's aura had already reached the mid-stage Earth Supreme level. "Who is that?" the sacred matron asked, her tone trembling as she stared at the figure behind Jiku. When had Xuanling Hall gained such a formidable powerhouse? Could it be that Jiku's earlier unshakable confidence stemmed from the arrival of this mighty protector? While the Yin-Yang Patriarch and other experts, along with all the spectators, were stunned by the appearance of the black-robed, red-haired elder, Xiao Yan's gaze was also solemnly fixed on the 5 figures. He particularly noted the elder behind Jiku, whose presence rivaled that of Yin Yao, one of the 12 saints of the ancient heaven-reaching Python clan. No wonder Jiku had acted so confidently before. He had summoned such a formidable guardian from somewhere. "This young man is the so-called dimensional shackles breaker from a lower dimension?" the red-haired elder asked as he moved, appearing in front of Jiku in a flash. "Yes. Judging by his aura, he likely hails from a super lower dimension," Jiku replied with uncharacteristic deference. Based on his judgment, while lower dimension talents could be extraordinary, those capable of reaching beyond the supreme level generally originated from advanced dimensions. For someone like Xiao Yan, already at the Earth Supreme level, to emerge from a lower dimension was exceedingly rare, even in the Great Thousand Worlds. Such individuals almost invariably hailed from superdimensions. A superdimension, is it? Those places hold treasures like dimension embryos that even Earth demon emperors of the extraterritorial evil clan covet, the red-haired elder remarked. To deal with this boy, they spent 1.5 million drops of supreme spiritual liquid and promised to do me a favor to summon me here. The disgrace my great-grandfather suffered centuries ago must not be repeated within Xuanling Hall, Jiku said darkly. His great-grandfather had once injured an unknown woman and was slain by a powerful lower-dimension warrior in retaliation. To conceal the event, Xuanling Hall fabricated a story about their hall master perishing during his breakthrough to the Earth Supreme stage. Decades later, when Xuanling Hall regained its strength, they sought revenge, only to uncover a chilling truth. The investigation revealed that the lower dimension warrior from centuries ago had joined a formidable lower dimension alliance and risen to become one of its 4 elders under the alliance's leader. His strength had advanced to the late Earth Supreme stage. This lower dimension alliance, known as the Guardian Realm Alliance, was now one of the 7 great alliances of the lower dimensions, boasting 3 genuine heavenly supreme powerhouses. Although this incident left a deep scar on Xuanling Hall, they had no choice but to swallow their anger and blame their bad luck when faced with the terrifying presence of the Guardian Realm. However, no one in Xuanling Hall expected that, hundreds of years later, another powerhouse from a lower dimension would provoke them, subjecting them to the same humiliation again. This was something they could not allow a second time. Moreover, the poison body that Jigu had hoped to extract from Yirong was unexpectedly sealed by Xiao Yan with a strange seal. Jigu had no way to break it, intensifying his killing intent toward Xiao Yan. As a result, Jigu spared no expense to invite an elder from one of the dominant forces on the Relic Continent, a force known by everyone in that land, the ancient royal court. Hovering midair, Jigu's gaze turned toward Xiao Yan ahead. "Heh, do you still think you can destroy my Xuanling Hall now?" At this point, even if the Yin-Yang Patriarch and others could hold back the Heavenly King Hall of the 8 Kings region, Xiao Yan still had to face the combined assault of 2 Earth Supreme powerhouses. Among them, the red-haired elder was at the peak of the early Earth Supreme stage, far stronger than ordinary early Earth Supreme powerhouses. The Yin-Yang Patriarch and others looked solemn as the situation had developed beyond their expectations. On Jigu's side, there were 3 Earth Supreme powerhouses, including the red-haired elder. In contrast, Xiao Yan was the only true Earth Supreme on their side. It was clear why the master of the Heavenly King Hall had sided with Xun'ling Hall. The balance of power was evident. Facing Zhigu and his allies, Xiao Yan turned to the red-haired elder. With a wave of his sleeve, the void-swallowing flame swept toward a spatial prison behind him, consuming it completely. Hiss! The spatial prison dissolved in the void-swallowing flame, releasing thousands of figures. When a few young people and Yi Tianlian saw Xiao Yan, they were overjoyed. Their expectations were correct. It was indeed Xiao Yan who had come to rescue them. But before they could express their gratitude, Xiao Yan's cold voice reached their ears. "Leave here, as far as possible." Xiao Yan's words stunned Yi Tianlian and the others. The young people gritted their teeth and motioned to the members of the Yuanda sect to follow. They knew that Xiao Yan would be fighting Xun'ling Hall, and their presence would only be a burden. "Go!" Yi Tianlian nodded, pulling the reluctant Yi Rong and the heavily injured sect leader of the Yuanda sect away from the mountain. Whoosh! Once Yi Tianlian and the others had departed, Xiao Yan took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on Zhigu and his group. Then, he directed his voice toward the Enyang Patriarch. "What do you think about these scoundrels freely entering the Eight Kings region?" The Enyang Patriarch and his companions were momentarily stunned. After exchanging glances, they nodded and moved to stand beside Xiao Yan. "You are a powerhouse from a lower dimension, and you may have no obligation to interfere here. But no matter what happens in the Eight Kings region, it is not for Xun'ling Hall to interfere," the Enyang Patriarch said, looking at Xiao Yan with some admiration. "Xun'ling Hall openly plans to eliminate one of the kings of the Eight Kings region. We cannot stand by and watch." "I agree," the Heavenly Fire Supreme from Fire King Cave added. "I won't stand by either," the Sacred Matron of Holy King Mountain said. Seeing their resolute attitude, Wu Xian and Lin Yun from the Lotus King Manor exchanged glances. "Since we've already offended Xun'ling Hall by showing ourselves, there's no turning back now. The Spirit King Manor will also join you." Xiao Yan glanced at the Enyang Patriarch and the others. He raised his hand, pointing toward the master of the Heavenly King Hall standing on a distant peak. "Stop him. With your strength, it shouldn't be impossible, right?" The Enyang Patriarch and the others were taken aback. Xiao Yan planned to confront Zhigu and the red-haired elder, both formidable Earth Supremes. If they joined forces, even a mid-stage Earth Supreme might struggle against them. "I have my own methods," Xiao Yan assured, noticing their doubts. "Besides, those three from Xun'ling Hall won't dare interfere in our battle that easily." "I'll handle Xun'ling Hall's Grand Elder," said the Heavenly Fire Supreme. "I can take care of the Second Elder," said Ling Yi, the Grand Elder of the Spirit King Manor. "Though our Lord is in seclusion, I can still deal with an 8th grade Supreme." "I'll deal with the Third Elder," said Lin Yun of the Lotus King Manor. She could only use 80% of her power alone, but that was enough. "Then let us take on the Heavenly King Hall." The remaining Enyang Patriarch, Sacred Matron, and Wu Xian were all at least in the late stage of the 9th grade Supreme level, with the Enyang Patriarch only a step away from reaching Earth Supreme. The combined strength of these three was enough to slightly contend with an Earth Supreme powerhouse. As for the master of the Heavenly King Hall, the foremost figure of the Eight Kings region, his alliance with the Xun'ling Hall was primarily due to their overwhelming power. When real stakes were involved, he would prioritize the ultimate interests of the Eight Kings region. Thus, the Enyang Patriarch and the others were not concerned that the master of the Heavenly King Hall would risk his life against them. At most, he would put on a show for Zhiku, but summoning elders of the Heavenly King Hall to confront the Enyang Patriarch and his group was out of the question. However, the true protagonists of this battle were Xiao Yan, Zhiku, and the red-haired elder. Xiao Yan's ability to contend with two Earth Supreme powerhouses using his so-called methods was the key to determining the outcome of this conflict. Within the surrounding mountain ranges, countless gazes filled with excitement focused on Xiao Yan, Zhiku, the 5 individuals with him, and the master of the Heavenly King Hall. It was clear that the impending clash would be the true earth-shattering battle. After all, this confrontation involved 4 genuine Earth Supreme superpowerhouses, and the ensuing scene of their fight would undoubtedly be cataclysmic. In that case, A murmured voice escaped Xiao Yan's lips. Under the watchful eyes of countless spectators in the surrounding mountains, a terrifying spiritual energy imbued with destructive flames surged from within Xiao Yan, sweeping outward. His voice resounded across the heavens and earth, and in that instant, everything was set ablaze.